All right, let's get into a real tech detective story. It's a mystery that starts with something we've all done, a single, faithful click on the upgrade button. This is a tale of some serious frustration, a whole lot of misleading clues, and of course, a solution that was hiding in plain sight the whole time. I mean, how true is that? It's that feeling, right? That mix of, yeah, I got this, and just pure terror. You've done your homework, you've made your backups, but you're still just holding your breath, hoping your entire digital life comes back online. Well, for one user, it didn't. At least, not in the way it was supposed to. So here's the setup. Our story kicks off right after a big upgrade, moving from Proxmox VE 8 to the new version 9. And at first, everything seemed fine until the user actually tried to use the system. And that's when they ran into what I can only call the infinite spinner of doom. Just picture this for a second. Your server, in this case its name was Nibbler, is up and running, you can ping it, no problem. But when you go to log into that web dashboard, the very heart of your operation, it's a ghost town. Nothing but endless, mocking little loading icons where all your important graphs and stats should be. And this is what was so maddening about the whole thing. The symptoms are just screaming that the system is broken. The interface is unbelievably slow, you can't even open a console to your VMs, and just trying to SSH in takes forever. But, and this is the crazy part, when you finally get a shell and check the system resources, the machine is practically taking a nap. CPU and RAM are just sitting there, totally idle. It's a system that feels completely broken, but has no idea that anything is wrong. So when a system feels this slow, this unresponsive, where does your mind go first? I know where mine goes. Hardware. It's got to be a physical problem, right? And so the prime suspect was immediately the boot drive. It had to be a failing SSD. And that's exactly what our user thought. That sluggish feeling is just classic dying drive behavior. So they do the logical thing. They go out, buy a brand new SSD, and swap it in. They go through the whole process of reinstalling, restoring from backup, and nothing, absolutely nothing changed. The exact same problem was back. It's like the hardware was just messing with them. Okay, so the hardware theory is a total bust. What's next? You dive into the logs, right? And that's where the first real clue appears. The Proxmox daemon, which is the engine behind that web interface, is just spitting out the same error message over and over and over again. Connection timed out. The system was trying to talk to itself, and it was failing. But why? We didn't know it yet, but this was a huge piece of the puzzle. So just when you think this is just an annoying slowdown problem, things take a turn, a really bad turn. The server, which was already basically unusable, started to crash. And I mean really crash, full-on system-halting failures. Yeah, we're not talking about a simple reboot. We're talking about kernel panics. Now, if you're not familiar, that's basically Linux's version of the infamous blue screen of death. It means something has gone so catastrophically wrong at the very core of the operating system that it just gives up. It's game over. So now the investigation has shifted from a performance issue to a critical stability crisis. Naturally, with the whole system crashing, suspicion swings right back to the hardware. But this time, the testing is exhaustive. A full memtest 86 scan is run on the RAM, the kind that takes literally hours. It comes back flawless. The motherboard BIOS, latest version, CPU microcode, all installed. After all of that, the verdict was in and it was final. The hardware was innocent. So if it's not the hardware, what in the world could make the entire system just fall over like that? Well, after painstakingly turning off every single VM and container one by one, the culprit was found. It was a single LXE container running Docker. And get this, it was a container that had been running perfectly fine for 3 straight years, right up until that Proxmox 9 upgrade. Now, this wasn't just any old container. This thing was special. It had a GPU pass-through for transcoding, a USB Zigbee dongle for home automation, all kinds of manual permissions and custom tweaks, the works. It was basically a house of cards that the old kernel didn't mind, but the new, stricter kernel in Proxmox 9 just came in and blew the whole thing over. So, simple enough, right? The user keeps that container offline and poof, the kernel panics stop. The server is stable again. Victory! Well, no, not even close. It turns out this whole crashing problem was a massive red herring. Because the original mystery, the infinite spinners, the slow SSH, the whole reason this investigation started, was still completely unsolved. And that brings us to the final act of this little drama. We've rolled out the hardware. We've found and caged the misbehaving container. What's left? Well, we had to turn to that one area we all check for about 5 seconds and then immediately forget about: networking. I mean, just stop and think about where we are in the story. The hardware is good, the unstable software is turned off, the system is solid as a rock, and yet it's still acting like it's running through molasses. What on earth could possibly be left to check? Believe it or not, the answer was sitting in a plain old text file this whole time. On the left, that was the old setup, using some non-standard, clever configuration. And the fix? On the right, it was to just make it boring. A standard, by-the-book, totally normal Linux bridge. The second that change was applied and the network was restarted, everything snapped into place. Instantly, it just worked. So let's tie this back to our first clue. Remember that connection timed out error from the logs? That was it. That was the smoking gun all along. The server's network was just broken enough to mostly work, but when the system tried to talk to itself to load the dashboard, it got lost in its own weird configuration. It was like sending a request and then just waiting for a reply that was never, ever going to arrive. That's what the loading spinner was. It was the system literally waiting for itself. So, after all that detective work, what's the moral of this troubleshooting nightmare? What can we actually learn from this? Well, there are a couple of really crucial lessons here for anyone who runs their own systems. First lesson, all those clever, hacky, but hey, it works configurations we all have lying around, they are ticking time bombs. That complicated container was fine for years on an older kernel, but a major OS upgrade can and will expose those fragile setups. Sometimes you just have to be prepared to rebuild things the simple, standard way. And the second big lesson is this: resist that immediate urge to blame your hardware. It's so tempting, I know, but before you start spending money and taking your server apart, just take a deep breath and check the config files. So often, the problem is just a few incorrect lines in a simple text file. You should always check your text files before you check your wallet. Ultimately, this whole saga really boils down to this one simple question. When things get weird, when the obvious solutions aren't working, don't forget the fundamentals. The most complex problems can have the simplest solutions, and a lot of the time, that solution is hiding in the network configuration. So next time your system feels off, before you do anything else, go and check your bridge.